they realize you haven't done exactly this before. You haven't worked exactly at this company. You haven't grown it exactly by 50,000. Yeah, you haven't done those things. So they realize that. Now, if you said, yes, I've done exactly that, that would be lying. But if you're saying, no, I have the ability to do that. I haven't done that before, but I have done this, and this is very much relevant to doing that. This is what's necessary to make that happen. Now you're on the way to getting hired. What do you mean, what's my superpower? Well, I stare at people's shoes. Yeah, if they stare at me, yeah, I just look down at their shoes. I look and I look, and pretty soon, sure enough, they stop staring. Yeah, that's what happens. So are we ready? Are you ready? Okay, right. Hi, everyone. This is Tony. And in today's session, I'd like to talk about 3 reasons smart people don't get hired. Now, we've all been there. We've had friends that we call brainiacs, people with fancy degrees from fancy schools who spend long periods of time unemployed. Right? Maybe they get an interview. Maybe they get to the final rounds of interviews. But they can't seem to turn that corner or turn that page on getting the job that they seem to deserve. They have all the experience. They have all the credentials. They have everything that everyone online says they need. Emotional intelligence, they're gregarious and so forth. Everything that everyone says they need to get a job. Well, I'd like to talk about 3 things that may still be preventing them from getting that role. The first is what we call the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge is a situation where we have an understanding of ourselves, what we can do, what our experience is, but we can't seem to convey that experience and that picture to other people, right? It's a curse, okay? Now, I see that manifest in many resumes that people give me to pass on to others, right? I see that people list their education, they list their professional roles and so forth. Equal weight is given to just about everything. Right? Nothing in that resume or CV tells me directly that they want this specific role. Right? Someone has been a fireman, they've been a baker, they've been chief of the police, yet at the same time, I don't see where it is that they want to fit in and where they can fit into this role that's in marketing or in a law or anything of that nature. So as a result, if I'm a human being and I'm looking at this resume, I'm going to say, well, I can't get it, let's reject them. If I'm a bot, maybe I might pick out a few keywords, might put them into another round, but at the same time, you're probably not going to make it, once you do see a human being, you're not going to make it into that final place where you get that job. Now, how can we deal with the curse of knowledge? Well, one way to deal with that is thinking very much about your job search ahead of time, right? Who am I going to be sending that resume to? What sort of jobs am I going to be applying to? And if I was in that role, what would I be expecting, right? Very often in the job description, they describe, this person, we describe these skills, we need these competencies and so forth. And your role is going to be this and this, you will report and so forth and so on to so and so, right? Those are serious. That's precisely how people are thinking about it. And there's another cognitive bias that all of us tend to have, which you're going to see manifest in that job description, and that's called anchoring. Right? They have a particular vision as to how they see that role. It might be completely different than anything you've ever seen with that same role name attached to it, but nonetheless, that's their vision. That's their anchor. And by it being their anchor, that's their point of reference. Now, suppose you send in that resume, you've outlined and you've highlighted those things on your resume that suit that anchor, that meet that anchor, and you actually get a job interview. You're going to meet with that person. And the first thing you're going to ask them is, please tell me about the role. Tell me what you're looking for. That's getting them to reveal their anchor to you, right? Now, the next thing is you're going to try to see, out of all that experience that you've put into your resume, out of all those things that you've done, how can I actually target it towards that anchor and actually, by extension, take it to the place where they want this role to go, okay? That's the first thing. That's dealing with curse of knowledge. Now, there's another problem that we have, and that's called underconfidence. And this is particularly the case when it comes to people who are very smart. In an experiment done by 2 researchers named Dunning and Kruger, which famously many people know as the Dunning-Kruger effect, people were measured by competency, students were measured by competency, and it turned out that the bottom quartile of people in terms of competency always overestimated their abilities. In fact, when they were compared against people that were actually very competent, they often overestimated their abilities relative to those people who were actually competent. Now that's the part of that research of Dunning-Kruger effect that most people are familiar with, but there's also a flip side to that. The flip side is that people that were very competent in that experiment tended to underrate their abilities. They tended to have underconfidence compared to the overconfidence of the incompetent people, right? Now, in terms of smart people, many smart people have lots of experience, lots of skills, lots of tools that they can bring to bear in a particular situation. And as a result, they often underestimate what their abilities are and how those abilities might suit the role. In particular, they often retreat when the interviewer is saying, well, can you do this? Can you grow my customer base by 50,000? Can you take us here? Can you take us there? And so their first response is a critical assessment of themselves. And through that critical assessment of themselves, they come back to that interview and say, well, no, I don't think so, right? The second thing is looking at that interviewer's statement, can you grow by 50,000, and saying, well, that's not possible, right? And I'm going to tell you that neither of those two responses are the correct responses to this kind of a situation. The first one is, well, yes, you can look at your abilities and you can know what those are and so forth and so on, but you really don't know what 50,000 means in this context. You don't know the people you're going to be working with. You don't know the tools that you'll have. You have not had that specific job or that specific role before. So how can you say no? So the first thing is getting ourselves already ready when we walk into that interview to say yes. Yeah. The second thing is realizing that even if we are correct about this being something that's unrealistic, an unrealistic expectation by this hiring manager or the person you're interviewing with, then that no can come later, after you have the job. And what I mean by that is nothing dishonest. You're not withholding information or anything to them. But first you want to get the role. Then you want to see, is this possible? Right? Once you see that it's impossible as you suspected, then you outline to that supervisor or to the person who hired you, listen, these are the steps we need to take to get to where you want to go. This is what we need to get to 50,000. And if in fact it is impossible, they're going to see as you outline those steps that it's impossible to get there, perhaps in the time frame that they'd like you to get there. Okay? But what's important is you've got the job, you've got the ability to demonstrate that, and give yourself more time to show it. The last challenge that we see in a technical sense is called base rate neglect. But what that often means is you just simply don't have the ability to zero in on what that interviewer or what that job requires of you and how your experience can relate to it. It seems a lot like the other two, but base rate neglect is a specific psychological hang-up where we focus too much or too narrowly on our expertise or focus too narrowly on our knowledge and don't see the bigger picture, right? So someone might have hired you. They might say, well, listen, we're looking for somebody that can lead a team of highly intelligent science types in bringing this company to the forefront of its industry, right? Now, maybe you've always worked in a lab. Maybe you've always been in that scenario where you've been one of those science types, right? So you can think about that particular experiment you did on the human genome, but you somehow miss the bigger picture that what they're asking for is, do you have the management experience? Forget about experience. Do you have the management ability? Can you come from what you've learned working in labs, working with other people, working in partnership with others, and can you bring it to bear in this specific situation? Right? That's what they're asking. They want you to extrapolate from that experience you have had to an experience that perhaps you haven't had. And can you, in some sense, bring value to that position? And that is one of the hardest steps that I've seen many smart people try to make. They often think that there's some sort of a legal situation here, that, if I tell an interviewer, I tell someone I promise that I did this, then I'm lying. Well, no, you're not lying, because they're asking you, they realize you haven't done exactly this before. You haven't worked exactly at this company. You haven't grown it exactly by 50,000. Yeah? You haven't done those things. So they realize that. Now, if you said, yes, I've done exactly that, that would be lying. But if you're saying, no, I have the ability to do that. I haven't done that before, but I have done this, and this is very much relevant to doing that. This is what's necessary to make that happen. Now you're on the way to getting hired. Hi, this is Tony. Thanks for checking out my videos. If you'd like more of this content where I use behavioral science tools to help you develop personal hacks so that you can improve your life, your professional life, your family life, etc., then please consider becoming a regular subscriber. Also, if you're familiar with Patreon, please consider visiting my Patreon page and helping sponsor My goal here was originally to bring many of the tools that I use in advising major corporations, CEOs, and boards to a wider audience of people. And one way that you can help me do that is by becoming a patron. So until next time, please hack yourself.